when we turn on your tape, we should see somebody who plays with great effort, who plays with high intensity. It's not about necessarily the response, it's staying at the top of the inbox.
Getting a college football scholarship can be hard if you make it hard, but it can be simpler if you do the right things to get in front of and build relationships with the right coaches.
You're listening to the Football Scholarship Podcast, the playbook for parents and athletes who want to secure the best football scholarships possible. From securing a D1 football scholarship in the SEC at Ole Miss at just £5,700, myself, to helping 83% of the athletes I mentor achieve football scholarship offers and 42% going Division I, I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me and my co-host Brian Overton, who has 15 years of D1 college football recruiting experience, as we interview top experts, successful athletes, and discuss current recruiting trends. Together, we'll help you navigate the recruiting process so you too can achieve your dream of running out of that tunnel in front of 100,000 screaming fans.
Really excited to have you, Cody. He's the new head football coach at Concord University. After leading top-tier defenses and special teams units at Western Carolina, Coach Edwards brings a proven track record of success and leadership at both the Division I and Division II levels, and he's here to share his vision for building his championship culture and what he looks for in recruits chasing college football scholarships. What was that like, coming in as a new coach and trying to build your class?
Yeah. For me, it was kind of a unique experience because the previous head coach, they made a change back before Thanksgiving, and I didn't actually get hired until middle of January. So there's about a 2-month span of time there where there wasn't a head coach here. And so there were a number of players, 40 or 50 players that got in the transfer portal and left. And so the semester had already started by the time that I got hired. So I didn't have a chance to retain any of those players that were on our roster. And by the time I got hired and by the time my staff got hired, on signing day of 2025, I was still the only coach that we had on our staff. We were still actively hiring coaches. So we missed out on
signing day.
Yeah, on signing day. We were able to sign 4 or 5 players on signing day. But the way the transfer portal has really affected high school recruiting is so much recruiting goes on after signing day that we were able to still put together a very solid high school class for the 2025 group. And but it was very much we were really behind the 8 ball when we got started because, I was in early January, I was at Western recruiting at that place and then got here and it was trying to figure out and make contacts in the local areas. And, it just we were a little behind the 8 ball, but we were able to kind of press the reset button, so to speak, on a college football program because we had so many players left. We had an opportunity to recruit a bunch of players that we felt like fit our culture and fit our program and were going to help us move forward. So it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, and this is like a really good point right off the gate, which is like, especially at the Division II level, you don't have to sign on signing day to still get a Division II offer, right? Like this, like this. There's this fallacy, like, oh, if I don't sign on signing day, then I'm done. It's like, no. Maybe, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, but most of those at the big schools, they're signing in December. You know what I mean? Very rare are they signing on signing day anyways. So just because you didn't sign on signing day does not mean that you can't sign. I think that's a good point right off the bat here that you hit.
Well, and there's actually a couple of restarts in the recruiting process because at our level, we're recruiting up through December, and then there's that first signing day where, all the people who think they're going to sign Division I, a lot of those guys don't end up signing Division I. So all of those players who maybe weren't interested anymore, weren't interested in Division II are now back in the recruiting pile. So now we're recruiting those players in addition to the players that we were recruiting previously. And then you get to the second signing day in February. And then not everybody signs at that period of time as well. So then, we're in a recruiting battle with some other schools and a player chooses another program where we still have some scholarship money available that we're going to utilize after signing day. So it really kind of restarts after that first signing period and also after the second signing day period. Even when I was at Tuscaloosa, we were still offering scholarships and signing players up into, March and early April most of the time. So it just signing day is not the be all end all.
Yeah, especially I mean at the Division two level, you're signing like you just said, February, March, April, like it's fair game, right? Because
Hmm.
I mean for you too, like you said, it's also the combination of like, are they gonna sign FCS? Are they not quite there yet? Are they what's the
Hmm.
evaluation, right? So
Yep.
that's interesting. So how did you go about doing this by yourself? Like you were trying to recruit and hire your staff at the same time? Like what was that? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I was fortunate that I brought a couple of guys with me from Western Carolina, and they were guys who had kind of
Okay.
come up through the ranks there, and they came with me. But because they weren't actually hired, they couldn't go on the road, they couldn't visit schools, they couldn't really do anything in the recruiting world because they weren't officially part of our staff. So they were able to message players on Twitter and things of that nature. So for me, they were here in the office, Twitter recruiting or X recruiting, and then I was on the road visiting high schools and high school coaches and doing that piece of it. So, I was lucky to have a couple of people that were here. Even though they couldn't go out on the road and recruit, they were able to still reach out to players from the office and kind of do those type of things. So it was a lot of me on the road and them in the office and trying to compile lists and do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to come back to like your how you recruit on X and stuff like that. I think it's really important. But you mentioned something and I'm curious, just also for our listeners. You mentioned, building the culture, right? Versus, you had the 40, 50 guys leave and obviously you're trying to build your thing now, right? So what does
Mhm.
that look like for you? Like what is the culture that you're trying to build in your program?
Yeah, I think we say all the time there's three things that we look for that we're building our culture on. I don't think you need a bunch of things. And we say there's only one way to do it, and it's that way: discipline, accountability, and toughness. And when we tell our guys, discipline's about you. It encompasses your effort level, your internal motivation, your drive to do what we need to do on a day to day basis to be successful. Accountability is about us. It's how the people in our program hold each other accountable to that championship standard we want to chase every single day. And then toughness is about them. If we can be the most mentally and physically tough team that we play every single Saturday, it gives us a real chance to win. And I think if we can find players who buy into those three ideals, because the transfer portal it has really changed the game quite a bit, and it's had a major effect on high school recruiting, and good, bad, or indifferent, it's changed it. And I think at this point, at the Division II level, a lot of times, you sort of expect your higher level players will have opportunities, whether they seek them out or someone else seeks them out to be able to go to other places. And then you also have a section at the bottom of your roster that maybe those players were red shirts or they were unhappy with their playing time, so they want to hop into the transfer portal because everybody thinks the transfer portal is kind of this giant fix that if I just get in the transfer portal, I can go somewhere else. And so it makes it really difficult today in today's world of college football to build a culture. And so you have to do a great job, I think, with that group in the middle between probably that top 10% and the bottom 10% of making sure that 80% in the middle is really invested in what we're trying to build, invested in our culture, because they're going to have to be able to absorb all of the new personalities that we bring into our locker room every single year. So I think it's focusing on that middle 80% and trying to build that culture really, really strongly and really, really well with that group of people so that as the roster ebbs and flows like it does every year, it allows those personalities and those people to kind of be absorbed into our program and kind of fall in line and chase what we're all chasing, which is ultimately a championship.
Yeah, and when you look at things like, discipline and accountability and like, these are things that are controllable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
These are things that anyone can control, right? So,
Yep.
for players that are graded at the Division two level or just maybe below or just somewhere in that range that really want to go Division two, like how can they show that to you? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
can they show you, like, I'm a disciplined kid, I'm an accountable without just saying it, right? Because anybody could say those things, right? But like,
Yeah.
how could they show it to you, and how do you see it in kids?
Yeah, I think what you just asked is probably the most difficult thing that we do because at the Division II level, we recruit such a large section of players in terms of just with the roster sizes that we have. We may be reaching to players that are have the opportunity or some potential to go to the FCS level. We may be recruiting players who are have only ever had Division II offers. We may be recruiting players who have some Division III NAI offers who we're able to kind of pull up to the Division II level. And I think it's difficult to see that a lot of times. But the one thing I'll say to most people is when we turn on the tape, do we see people who play hard? Are they violent? Do they give great effort? We're still a staff that believes in the in-person evaluation. And so if we're heavily recruiting a player or we're really interested in a player, we're going to get to a practice. We're going to get to a game on a Friday night. We're going to watch that player play in person. And what do we see when we watch that player play? In terms of how they interact with their teammates, how they interact with their coaches, how they handle adverse situations. If we can see those type of things in a live competition section, we think that gives us a great handle on who the player is and who they are. And so, when we turn on your tape, we should see somebody who plays with great effort, who plays with high intensity. Because, if you're a guy who doesn't finish the play or doesn't arrive to the point of contact violently, or who takes plays off here and there, because anybody can look good in a 2-minute highlight tape. I think it's what happens in
Right.
between those highlight plays that are so important to us to find out who are people that are ultimately going to fit in well in our football program. And I'll go back to culture just real quick. I think what I tell people that we recruit, and I tell our team all the time, is I believe that culture is only relevant when talent is equal. So, for example, we could go play the University of Georgia every Saturday, and the University of Georgia or any other team, has more scholarships, more funding, more resources, all of those type of things. They have a greater chance to beat us every week. But when you're talking about playing the teams that we're going to play on our schedule, who are, similar funded, similarly talented, that's where I think our culture can make the biggest difference for us on Saturday afternoons. Is having guys who are really bought into what we're trying to do and what we're trying to build. Because at the end of the day, I mean, if you think of the few teams in college football who have great cultures year in and year out, you probably think of the service academies. I would assume, and and it's at the end of the day for those guys, it comes down to talent at the end of the day. But those guys can win their conference every year. They may not be able to compete for a national championship when it comes to talent. So that's what I mean when I
Right.
say I think
Right.
culture is only relative or relevant when talent is equal.
Yeah. Okay. So walk me through kind of your, like you mentioned, you try to get to a practice and you try to get to a
Yep.
game and stuff like that. But obviously, even like this year, that wasn't possible. And I'm not saying because you just
Yeah.
got in, right? But like, let's say a kid, you're still signing, a kid reaches out, but it's after the season, right? For example,
Yep.
but you're like, wow, this
Yep.
kid's a great as a Division II player. So what you look at then is just you'll look at their highlight tape, but then it's like, hey, I need to see a full game. Coach, can you
Yep.
send me reach out to their
Yep.
coach or whatever? Hey, can you send me a
Yeah.
full game? And this is good for
Yep.
everyone to hear too, guys. Is like, some coaches, yeah, they do offer off the highlight tape. There's no doubt about it. But there's other coaches like Cody here who looks at a highlight tape and says, cool, now send me the game tape. I'm interested,
Yeah.
send me the game tape, right? Let me see a full
Yeah.
game tape. So if you
Yeah.
guys listening, we say this time and time again on the defense side of the ball, you got to play with violence. Cody said that twice, right? And you got to do it all game, play in, play out,
Yeah.
all game, right? Like, especially if you're on defense, like this. So, no plays off, right? Coaches are going to look at your full game a lot of times, not all, but some will. So, why not? You talk about being the guy that's going to be, that shows up on time. It's going to be disciplined. It's going to be accountable. But then you take plays off and you can't do it, right? You got to do it all the time, practice in a game. And I think Cody brought up a really good point there that I wanted to really emphasize.
Yeah.
It's all the time, right? It's not just on big plays. It's all the time. It's the way you live all the time. That's awesome, man. So Cody, walk me through how you go about finding, obviously this is your new program, but just your recruiting process in general. Like, how are you going out and finding players to recruit and to eventually offer?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for us is, in today's world, there's all kinds of recruiting services and there's all kinds of Twitter and emails and things of that nature. The way that we try to compartmentalize it is we select certain local areas where we will have a presence in every school in our local areas. And then we have our regional areas where we'll stretch out into other states, whether it be North Carolina, North Georgia, South Carolina, where we will heavily recruit those areas. We're going to be there every December. We're going to be there every spring. Where we're going to go into those areas where that's going to be an area where we can relatively easily get to a game, get to a practice, those type of things. And then we have what we call our impact areas, so areas that are further away, whether that may be a South Georgia, a Florida, the Norfolk area in Virginia. just different areas where you think of, you probably think of pockets of players where most coaches are going to say that's a hotbed of talent or this, that, or the other. And that's the way we compartmentalize it. We start locally, and we're going to have a heavy presence or heavy foot traffic presence in the high schools in our local recruiting areas, probably within a 2 to 3 hour radius of our campus, and then we stretch out to what we call our regional areas, where we'll have a presence, a couple times a year in the fall recruiting in the spring, and then obviously we'll phone recruit a lot of times, which we're X recruit, email recruit, those impact areas where if we find a player, let's assume it's let's say Houston, Texas. If we find a player in Houston, Texas, that we are interested in, they're interested in us, we think that player can come in and make an immediate impact. Now we'll make the trip out to get to Houston or to Miami or wherever else the case may be. So that's how we kind of compartmentalize recruiting, because there's just so much data out there, and there's so many players, and there's so many ways that players can get in contact with us. For us, that's how we compartmentalize it and kind of make sure that we're managing a digestible database of athletes or players.
Gotcha. So each coach has like a specific area that
Mm-hmm.
they're
Yeah.
responsible for. So you go the area coach
Yeah.
route. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Yep.
that's one of the things we teach is when you reach out to a school, don't just like blast everyone. Find out who's responsible for recruiting your area,
Yep.
and then build a
Yep.
relationship with that coach, and
Yeah.
go from there. Versus like blasting a guy. You're in South Carolina or North Carolina, and this coach is recruiting Virginia. It's like, hey, he's
Yeah.
focusing on Virginia. Just find who's responsible for South Carolina and talk to
Sure.
him, and he'll
Yep.
move you up the chain, right? So how does that work for you? Like, let's say you get in touch with an area coach. That coach is like, wow, I like this guy. What's your process? For some,
Yep.
it's we go position coach and then a coordinator and then up to the head. Like, how are you gonna go about? Like, how does your process work?
Yeah, we have a very similar process. And one of our software systems used before, we had something called a pipeline, and we still call it that to this day. So area coaches are responsible for their specific areas. They'll go out, they'll collect the recruits in their areas that they believe can play for us. They'll input them into our database and our system, and that they will now assign those players to the position coaches. So our area coaches don't have to watch every single player. They'll assign those out to the position coaches. The position coaches will then comb through those lists of players. They'll make their top 5, 10, 15 players in their list, regardless of area, and then they'll pass those up to a coordinator level where we will actually watch those players as a staff. So we may take the top 10 players at each position on offense, and we will watch those as an offensive staff. Same thing on defense, same thing on special teams. And then after we kind of comb through those at the side of the ball areas, then those next set of prospects will come to me as the head football coach, at which point we will determine offers and kind of go from there in terms of who we want to actively pursue and actively recruit. So very similar model, I'm sure, to most people, but we call it our pipeline, and that's how we structure our pipeline and how it goes through the chain. Because at some point,
Yeah, it's
in the spring, it's really more about area recruiting. And then as you move toward the fall and as we get to, August and beyond, it really becomes more of a positional recruiting, where our running backs coach is going to he knows he's got 2 spots he's got to fill, and he's got to find those 2 players regardless of area. So initially, spring, it's more of an area type thing where we collect the prospects. And then as we move toward the fall, it becomes more of a positional focused recruiting. So I would say exactly what you said was correct. Making sure you know who the area coach is, but also staying in contact with those position coaches as well. Because I can tell you from personal experience, whether it's a Western Carolina or Tusculum or even here at Concord, we've taken so many players over the years that have just stayed in contact with us. And maybe we didn't have a spot in February, but hey, this guy sent me a couple of emails. He seems interested in our program. He's a good player. Middle of March, we now have a space. He's at the forefront of the mind. He's at the top of the inbox. And I tell people all the time, for me, it's not about, I don't need you to send me an email every single day or an X message every single day or a text message, but just make sure that you're staying relevant in the inbox of schools in which you're interested in and you think potentially have an interest in you as well. And it's just about staying in contact, because those spots can come open at any time.
That's such a good point, man. And it's about right. So it's like, cool, I got 2 spots. I got 6 people on my board right now. You're number 5. So it's not a no for good. It's just a no
Mm-hmm.
right now. And
Yeah.
so what you just said is perfect, and it's actually exactly what we teach. Don't be annoying, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
freaking DM the coach every freaking day. But
Right.
one, when you post something and it's meaningful, it's
Yeah.
okay. Tag the coach. Keep them
Mm-hmm.
top of mind. Every time something big happens, you see the coach has a big win or you have a big, huge game, it's okay to DM the coach every now and don't be annoying, but you want to stay top of mind. And today, like Cody, more than ever, you could do that on social media
Yep.
where a coach is on his feed and he sees you, or you know what? The coach posts something that's meaningful and you comment on it. You
Right.
know, it's like very simple things that you could do to stay top of mind on
Right.
a coach's board. They're not
Mm-hmm.
ready yet, but it's about effort, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
I say all this, Cody, with like the first thing is you gotta be evaluated and you gotta grade as a that level player first,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can't
Sure.
be a you know at a you know, I grade as an NAI player. You could be grading as an NAI player and like constantly nagging at a G5 coach.
Sure.
It's not gonna
Yes.
work, right? So
Yeah.
got to know, am I targeting the right coaches in the right conference, in the right division? Am I targeting the right opportunity? And I'm just not quite on their board yet, but I'm interested in these, 12 schools or whatever. Then yeah, you got to stay top of mind. And
Yeah.
I like that you at least are like, hey, like, don't be annoying, but reach out, like, stay top of mind with me.
And I tell players all the time, specifically at camps and things of that nature, when I talk, anytime I get to talk to players about recruiting, I say, if you reach out to a coach and a coach doesn't respond, don't get discouraged. And I've even at times for recruits kind of pulled up my X direct messages and kind of scrolled through and said, look how many messages we get. And it's not about necessarily the response. It's just about staying in contact and just staying at the top of the inbox. Because if you do get discouraged, now you're going to end up 40, 50, 60, 80 messages down the inbox. And it may be a long time before someone ever gets to you. And it's not about, hitting them up every day. It's once a week, once every couple of weeks, and just kind of staying in contact. And I always advise players, and I use the number 8. You can use the number 16, whatever you want. Find 2 schools that are really reaches for you. Maybe you don't grade at that level, but you feel confident that, you've got some sort of connection to the coach, and maybe hit up those coaches at a couple of schools, and then find 4 schools or so where you feel that you do great at, and really stay in contact with those coaches, whether it's a regional thing or whatever the case may be, and then find 2 schools that maybe you grade a little higher than them, but those are safe schools that you want to stay in contact with. Because again, going back to the transfer portal, we've seen such a shift over the last couple of years. 5 years ago, maybe guys that were going FCS are now Division II players, and for example, at Western Carolina, we signed multiple
Yeah.
3-star players in our program who 5 or 6 years ago were not coming to Western Carolina. They were going to the Group of 5 level. And that's why I say you got to have, I use the number 8. You can use whatever multiple of that number you want, but just find some schools at the top that are reaches, find 4 that are your fit, and then find a couple that are just kind of safe bets that you want to stay in contact with.
You nailed it, Cody. You freaking nailed it, brother. Yeah, we do a 50-30-20 split.
Right.
It's
Okay.
really good. We do
Yeah.
50-30-20, but every athlete's a little different. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
80-20 or 50-50, but
Right.
50 where you're at, right? Where you're grading now, 20 at the next grade up, and
Yeah.
then 30 at the grade below, right? Set
Yeah.
yourself up. Like
Yeah.
don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're the parent of a high school football player who wants to earn a college football scholarship and your son is struggling with marketing himself or confidently communicating with college coaches, I wrote this book specifically for you. Inside it, I share exactly how I earned a Division I football scholarship in the SEC at just 5'7" and 150 pounds, without going to camps, being ranked, and without any connections. And right now, I'd like to give you a copy completely free. All I ask is that you just cover shipping. I'll drop a link in the description below so you can grab your copy before we run out.
And so I know this might shock you, but we actually do 60 schools.
Okay.
50 to 60 schools.
I like that.
And we do that 50-30-20 split, 50-50 split. But but they use a board. So like you have a pipeline, they have here's all of my schools. Here's all the schools I did a questionnaire for. Here's all the schools that I found the area coach for, that I've communicated with, so they could see on a
Right.
board where all the schools are. It also would be like, I don't know how you do it without it, but you guys have a pipeline with all your guys, right?
Yep.
So how do you at the Division II level, how do you handle the transfer portal? I'm very curious. Like, are you, and maybe every coach is different, right? But for
Mhm.
you, like, are you going to be more high school heavy? Are you going to use the transfer portal at all, or did you, or
Mhm.
how are you going to go about using it?
Yeah, I think at any level, whether it's our level, FCS level, those are the two levels that maybe have the most experience at. I think you've got to use the transfer portal as a way to enhance your roster rather than build your roster. I think it's really, really hard. And I've seen it a couple of different times where you bring a bunch of transfer portal players in who maybe have been in college 3 or 4 years, who have kind of their own ideals and their own way of doing things. They've been in maybe a couple different cultures. And so I think it's really hard to get that many new players each year to really kind of gel and kind of come together, get yoked together to go kind of do a common goal. And I think so much today's world of college football is it's look at me, what stats can I get? I'm going here to get these stats so that I can try to transfer over here. And everybody's so individualized. And I think so for us, we're going to place a heavy emphasis on the high school recruiting while using the transfer portal sparingly. And I'll be very transparent with you how we use the transfer portal in this specific class. We focused on schools in which where we had connections. So, for example, we tried to sign players from specific programs that were in the transfer portal where we had connections to either coaches or staff members where we could get a real picture of who they are in terms of their production or who they were in the locker room or those type of things. And then it becomes the other piece of it in the transfer portal is we really focus on maybe players that we recruited out of high school that we built good relationships with that maybe while we were at Western Carolina or other places who, now 2 years later are back in the transfer portal or in the transfer portal. I think for me, that seems to be the safest way that you can do it. Because if you just open up the transfer portal and just, start looking at names and you have no real connection to someone that they most recently played for, you don't have a good connection with their high school coach, or you didn't recruit them in high school, you're really taking a major shot in the dark in some type of way. So for us, it's about, building the high school relationships with high school players, whether they come to us or not. And then as those players, re-enter the portal year and a half, 2 years later, re-recruiting those players because we already have a connection to them. And I think that's where we've seen a good amount of success. At least I think we've seen success. We'll know come September. But I think
Right.
that's where we've been successful. And I think we were fortunate to sign some players just because we had prior relationships with them or prior relationships with high school coaches or relationships with the coaching staffs in which they were leaving the school they were at.
Yeah. Especially if you lost. How many guys you said? 40, 50 guys?
40 to 50
You lost
guys.
to the.
And yeah, and the majority of those players were scholarship level players for us. So, and that's the thing with the transfer portal is so let's say you've got, a quarterback who's been a 3 year starter for you. And then all of a sudden, you've got a good team around him and he decides to transfer going into his 4th year of eligibility. In today's world of coaching, it's very hard to say, we're going to go with a high school player and try to get the same production, or maybe take someone who hasn't really played in your offense that much. Where that's where it almost forces college coaches or makes them panic to feel that they've got to go get a quarterback from another program who's played, and now you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle with someone who's played at another program and coming into your program so that you don't lose the production. And I think that's the
Yeah.
toughest thing with the transfer pool.
That is a good point. Like if you lose a player at a position, they're really good starter, and you're like, shoot, we need to backfill that like now.
Yeah,
I don't have time to develop. Maybe there's the player behind him is just not quite there yet. Now it's like, shoot, I got to get in the portal.
yeah,
I could see the conundrum there of that.
yeah,
Interesting. It's
yeah,
tough, man. It's tough being
yeah.
a coach today. You know what I mean? Like, I
Hmm.
mean, our head coach here is, he was a recruiting director for the last 15 years at Division I level, and he was like, at Arkansas. He kind of built their whole recruiting department, and he ended up leaving to come here. And he's like, man, I was just ready.
Yeah,
It's like I was beat
yeah,
up from the whole, because at that level, it's not even about recruiting anymore. It's about
hmm
money. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like how much NIL can I get from Arkansas versus Ole Miss versus LSU? You know
yep,
what I mean? It's like
absolutely, absolutely.
so, but that doesn't really happen at the D2 level too much, right? I mean, come on, no way that they're asking for like
Uh, you would be
you just
surprised.
can't be.
So you would be surprised that at this level we're starting to see NIL trickle into the Division II level, and you see some programs that maybe are the halves of Division II that maybe have money to do NIL, and we've talked with some transfer portal players, in this recruiting class that have had NIL offers. At other Division II programs, and now we're not talking about the type of money that Ole Miss, LSU, all of these places are paying, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
for us here at Concord. We're venturing into our own sort of NIL program as we move into this next year, and it'll take time to grow. It's not that we are just going to get a donor
Right.
who's going to drop us off a $20 million check at some point in time, but it is becoming a very real thing at this level that some schools are starting to move into the NIL space.
Parents are always like, "Oh, the transfer
Yep.
portal hurts recruiting." Da, da, da. Like, come on, dude. Like, the same seniors got to go. They got to come in. Like, there's plenty of high
Mhm.
school opportunities. The portal
Yeah.
makes it interesting,
hmm
but the opportunities are still there for high school kids
hmm
at a high level. Because one thing a lot of people don't take into account, I'm curious your perspective on this, Cody. But one thing a lot of people don't take into account is there's a lot of guys that enter the portal on scholarship and then don't end up getting an opportunity anywhere else and don't have a scholarship when they go back. So now there's
hmm
opportunities for high school kids or other kids to get scholarships. So that's
hmm
a real thing. Like, I mean, this happens every year.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And I don't know the exact number. It's something like 40 to 50% of the football players who enter the transfer portal on scholarship, do not receive a scholarship on the way out of the transfer portal, or either they just get stuck in
It's
the
like
portal,
33% or something.
something of
Yeah.
that nature. And I've had this conversation with players at Western Carolina, with players at Concord who potentially at this point wanted to enter the transfer portal. It's the conversation has to be very real, and you can't sugarcoat things anymore with players. You have to be very transparent because let's say we have a starting corner who plays for us a lot and wants to get in the transfer portal, and the big line is, well, I just want to see what's out there, and then they hope that they can come back from the transfer portal. And we have to be very transparent with those players and say, if you want to enter the transfer portal, we understand, but also understand that you're a really good player for us. And so we have to go try to replace your production, whether that's with signing another high school player or whether that's replacing you with some sort of transfer portal player. So you're really taking a big
Using that
risk.
scholarship.
Yes, using that
Yeah.
scholarship. And and that I think that's
That's it.
something that players don't get enough guidance, and they don't get enough, because there's not a way like the NFL, for example. I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have where all the draft eligible players would get their draft grade or their pre-draft grade to kind of be able to make their decision whether or not they were going to come out early or not. And there's just no pre-draft grade for the portal for these players, and so a lot of these players who are good
It's a good
players get into the portal and they don't get anything on the other side of it, because they just don't have enough education, because everybody thinks, because I had a good season at school A, or maybe I was an all conference player at school A, that I'm going to get in the portal and be able to go up a level, because nobody really wants to go laterally. People want to go up. And I think that's the big key. And especially if you are an all conference level player at the Division II level and you transfer to the FCS level, and you're not an all conference level player, well, then you've kind of proven that your production doesn't translate to a higher level. And I think that's really key as well, because if you're going to get in the transfer portal and try to transfer up, you've got to make sure that production is going to transfer and that you're going into a situation where you're not going to sit behind somebody or be a rotational player, unless you're happy doing that. If you're, maybe if you're going to a place where you're getting a
Yeah.
big NIL deal, you might be happy doing that. But I think there's not enough
Yeah.
education for players.
That's such a good point. You do get a draft grade to make a decision, and then at this, there's no grade. You're just like, all right, we're going.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, camps.
Mhm.
All right, everyone. This is the time of year, right? Everyone wants to know camps, 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 camps. How do camps fit into your recruiting process? Do you do indie camps only? Do you go to mega camps? Like, how do camps fit into your recruiting process?
Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, in-person evaluations I think are so important, and as many times as we can get eyes on players at camps, that helps so far in the recruiting process, or helps go so far in the recruiting process. We have our own individual camps here on our campus. We had one this past Saturday, and we extended I think 6 or 7 offers to players at that camp, because I think that's really
Okay.
important. And then we actually had a couple coaches at the mega camps that have been going on over the last couple of days, and some coaches at some mega camps this weekend as well. And I think for us, it's about targeting specific players that we want to go see at those mega camps and making sure that we're getting, because if they're not going to come to our camp, we want to at least try to get eyes on them somewhere else. But the one thing and again, I give just kind of cover up the logo and try to give players the best advice I can when I recruit them is, I think you've got to be really selective with camps, because you can go broke going to camps where schools aren't recruiting you. And I think if you've got to make some real serious decisions, if you're not a Power 4 player by the time you're going into your senior year, if you want to go to a couple because you think you might have a stellar day and get on somebody's radar, I think maybe that's beneficial. But I think if you're going to try to go, if you're not a Power 4 rated player and you're spending your summer going to 6 or 8 Power 4 camps and utilize money that you could have spent to go to FCS or Division II camps, I don't think that's very beneficial to your overall recruiting process. And then you talk about mega camps. I think the rise of mega camps has been really good for a lot of players, because it's given a lot of players a lot of exposure, and there are a lot of eyes at those camps. There's a lot of opportunity to be seen. But I think, again, the mega camps, if you're not elite in some way, if you're not bigger, if you're not a tall guy, if you're not a super quick guy,
Or
if you're not going to
240.
if you're not going to go run a really fast 40, if you're not going to do something that's elite, then the mega camps are really not beneficial for most, in my personal opinion. It's my personal opinion. They're not really beneficial for most athletes. If you are let's just use this, I'm just going to call out a random number. If you're a 5'9", 165-pound wide receiver who's going to go run a 4.6, a mega camp is really not very useful for you. You're better off to come to a Division II camp where you're going to get coached by our coaches or anybody else's coaches, and you're getting seen by those coaches, where you have a real chance, if you light it up, to get an offer. And I think that's the big key that
And to
nobody
build a
really,
relationship,
yeah.
to show those coaches that I'm disciplined and I'm
Mhm.
accountable and I'm a good character guy
Yeah.
and all.
Yeah.
Like, you have a chance to build a relationship with the
Yeah.
coaches versus,
Yeah.
like you said, dude, we literally. This is my second podcast of the day, but I did a podcast with Brian, and I do a podcast every week, and we
Okay.
did it on mega camps, and I'm just dying laughing right now at everything, because this is exactly what we
Yeah.
talked about, like, to
Yeah.
a T, dude. Like, if you're not going to this camp, I don't want to cut you off, Cody, but if you don't go to this camp and you're not running a 4.340, or you're a defensive dude and you're just throwing offensive linemen like rag dolls, and you're just freaking, or you're an offensive lineman just running people over and and just destroy, or you're 6'5" and you're just jumping over DBs, and like, it's not gonna work out. You're not gonna leave happy, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the big key, is that it's just, if you are a good football player, who's a good football player, who's good at everything, not elite at anything, or maybe, and I say that, I don't mean that in a harsh way. I just mean you have to look at yourself
No, but
objectively. And if you're not elite
exactly.
at something, the mega camps may not be the best bang for your buck. You may be better off trying to, go to a camp on a college campus and build those relationships like you were mentioning. Because for us, if you've built a relationship with us in the recruiting process and we know you're going to be at ABC camp, of course, if we can get our eyes on you, it's beneficial for you to be at that ABC mega camp, right? But if no one knows about you and you've not really built relationships with anybody, or you've not told anybody that you're going to ABC mega camp, you're going to go to that camp and eyes are going to go to the people who flash, and the squeakiest wheel gets the most oil, right? So the person who's flashing the most, whether it's NAIA, D3, D2 coaches, we're all looking at that specific player unless we have targeted the 10 players that we know we're going there to see. I think that's the blessing and the burden of the mega camps.
Yeah. And that's even what Brian said is like depending on the level, like even at the SEC level, like they weren't even sending any guys. But when he was at FIU and stuff like that, they might send a GA if it was the only way they could see a guy, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But they
Mm-hmm.
might send one or two guys to go. But it was very specific to see a specific player that they knew was going to be there, right? Like
Yep.
exactly like what you guys
Yep.
are doing. But I think you said something to kick this whole camp thing off, and I can't express it enough. Whether you do it with us, you do it with whoever you want to do it. I don't care. Get an evaluation of where you're at right now. Someone to objectively look at your game film who has college football coaching, recruiting experience, and to tell you honestly where you're at from a Power 4, G5, FCS, Division 2, NAI, D3. Where are you? And what do you need to do to get to the next level? And to know those things, because that'll change your whole camp schedule, right, Cody? That'll change your whole, like, what am I doing? What am I reaching out to? You said that in the beginning, like go to indie camps with schools that match your level of play, right? That you have an option. And maybe you go to one or two, but if your whole summer is G5 camps and you're grading as a Division 2 player, would you rather go to 6 D2 camps and leave with 3 offers, or go to 6 G5 camps and leave with no offers? I mean, that's the difference, right? Am I missing
Yep.
something?
Absolutely.
So Cody, how do you get players to like see that? Like, this is what I do all day. Just try to get people to see like it's getting a college football scholarship can be hard if you make it hard. But it can also it's I never want to use easy because it's not easy, but it could be simpler if you do the right things to get in front of and build relationships with the right coaches, right? Like that could be interested in you. Like if you're grading, like look, Cody's like, hey, like we want good good football players that might not be the 6'5" guy. Come to our camp. Show us that you're accountable, that you're disciplined, that you're tough, and you're gonna play violently. Come prove us. And we offer players. Like
I think the toughest
and
thing
come be a part of a
is
great program.
I think the toughest thing is maybe what's kind of overlooked in the world of college athletics today, because we have so many people maybe who live vicariously through whether it's their child or someone else, and I think the objectivity for these recruits to really look at themselves and say, who am I? Because everybody wants to play, G Power 4 ball or G5 ball. But I think you really, what you said, you hit the nail on the head, is having somebody to objectively look at your film and give you a grade and really kind of give you some real world advisement on where you should go. Because if you don't have some objectivity or some way to evaluate yourself and get somebody to look at your film, you can waste a lot of time. But what you said is it's easier or more beneficial for you, or your chance to get a college scholarship is much better if you're attending those camps and you're building those relationships and you're doing those things, rather than kind of spinning your wheels in places that you shouldn't be maybe anyway, if you had just gotten an objective look at your film or had some very honest conversations with yourself about who you are.
Yeah, totally. So good, man. Cody, I appreciate that. Every now and then we get dads and they're just like, we don't need an evaluation. He's D1. And I was like, okay. Like, who told you? And he's like, no, I just know he's D1. And I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, we've had some people look at it. And I was like who? And they're like, no, just some people, his trainer. And just like, he's D1. I'm like, all right. I guess he's D1 then. Well, good luck with that one. You know what I mean? I get it. Everyone wants to be D1, but here's one thing too, Cody. Like, I want your opinion on this. It's like, hey, it's like some parents don't or even players would rather not get the evaluation and get the honest input, like from fear of rejection or fear of failure, versus using that as motivation. Like, hey, I know now, okay, I got a grade. I am an NAIA guy right now, but they also told me if I do this, this, and this, like, because, if I do this, this, and this, then I will show better on film and I can move myself up to the Division II or the FCS level, depending on size or whatever. But like, now I know what I can do to get better versus just thinking one thing and then,
Yeah.
now
I,
I'm
I think
screwed.
I think what we talked about earlier, and whether it's my rule of 8 or your rule of percentages, it's not that getting the evaluation is rejection. It's that getting the evaluation helps you focus. It helps you to put yourself in a world of where you're looking at these schools. That doesn't mean you can't still reach and aspire and try to get there and reach out to those coaches and go to select
Yes.
camps and try to do those things. But it helps you to focus your time and effort and energy where you need it the most, and you can still reach to those other places. It shouldn't be a place of fear or failure, because just the fact of the matter is the recruiting has changed because the talent is getting forced further and further down, because so much of the recruiting at the higher levels, and whether it's Division I, FCS, or whatever, is happening in the transfer portal. And that means they're signing less high school players. So those high school players are now getting pushed to lower and lower and lower levels. So I think it's, in maybe a parent's eye or a coach's eye or something, years ago, you may have been a Division I player. Well, now you may be a Division II player, just based on the way the recruiting landscape has changed. And I think having a real conversation allows you to focus rather than wasting your time and then trying to catch up on the back end, because that's where it's so hard to catch up. You want to be able to spend your time on the front
Yeah.
end and try to chase those other things.
100%. It's the majority of your time. Where are you spending the majority of your time in the right
Mm-hmm.
spot? You can't tell me not to aspire to go big, right? You
Yeah.
gotta you gotta
Yeah.
aspire, but also like hedge your bet. Spend your time in a place that you can get a scholarship. So, Cody, what's your next play? My last question for you here. I'm gonna get you out of here, but what's your next play in building your program, and what could you share to families and players out there that are grading as a Division II player, that are maybe 26s right now and are like, hey, I want to learn about Concord. I want to tell, like, what could you share with them about your program and what you're building, and to inspire them to maybe reach out?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the world of college athletics today, with the transfer portal and all these other things, in college football, you can get pretty bad pretty fast, and you can get pretty good pretty fast, and you can move your roster around year to year. And I think we've done a pretty good job up to this point of managing the high school recruiting with kind of mixing the transfer portal recruiting, and I think we've put together a pretty talented roster. I'm confident we're going to build a really, really strong culture here that's going to allow us to compete. And I think that's the big key, is we're going to push to compete year one. I tell, players and people that I talk to, this is not a multi-year rebuild as we see it. We think this is something that we've been able to build pretty quickly to be able to be really competitive this fall. And I think as we start to move to the 2026 class that we have, here in spring recruiting and those type of things, I would encourage parents and families and recruits to come out and see us, get to a game day, see what we look like on the field. See how electric we hope we're going to be on offense, and how stifling we're going to be on defense, and how we're going to make game-changing plays on special teams. And see our game day environment. We've got a great fan base here who's supported this program through the ups and through the downs, and it's been a program that's had a lot of success, and we're quickly, I think, building back to that level of success that Concord has seen in the past, and I believe we're going to build something really exciting here. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in Concord to reach out to us, and would love to get those people on campus, because I think that's so important, because seeing is believing. And we can talk about things, and we can talk about our culture, and we can talk about, what we're going to do and how we're going to play on game day. But I think until you can get in there and you can see it and really get to interact with our coaching staff, get to interact with our players, get to be around our fan base on game days, that's what's going to be so important for the next phase of our program as we look to attract the class of 2026.
That's awesome, man. And if anyone's gonna do it, it's you, Cody, because you worked with Kerwin Bell. So I know, but I know you will, man.
Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons from Coach Bell. Really thankful for his leadership over the last 4 years, and I've taken a lot of things from him. And I've been fortunate in my career to work with some really good coaches at all levels, and I've been fortunate, I think, to find a really good place that's going to support our football program and help us reach the success that we hope for.
Cool, man. Well, we'll do everything we can to support you, Cody, and we wish you nothing but success. And hopefully, we'll have you on the podcast next year.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Thank you very much.
You got it, brother.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Scholarship Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And for more free resources, or if you're interested in working with us, visit gonextplay.com. Until next time.